All right, guys, just want to welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be discussing, is there a potential quarterback duel brewing in Columbus for Ohio State? Defending national champions are going to have to replace Will Howard. And, of course, it's just a revolving door at quarterback. One goes in, one goes out, and the flow keeps going, and they never have problems at this position. Even Kyle McCord, who was kind of rushed out of town last year in favor of Will Howard, had a phenomenal season with Syracuse, and I think he'd have been good for the Buckeyes if he ended up returning as well. Will Howard shows up, though, puts up 35 touchdowns, 4,000 yards passing, leads them to a national championship. Of course, he put on a clinic in the college football playoff, as did the rest of the team. But obviously, this is going to be some big shoes to fill. That was a veteran quarterback who had numerous years of experience under his belt. And the exciting thing for Ohio State is they got guys here that can, at least have 2 or 3 years as a starter before they depart. So you're not going to see, I don't think, too much transfer action moving forward for Ryan Day and his staff. Of course, you start with Julian Sayin. This guy is the presumed starter. He was originally signed to Alabama. Nick Saban retires, and he instantly bolts, and he ends up in Columbus. Barely played in his first season. It was very limited reps. His only completions were like out routes. He had a hitch to the flat, had a nice play on a 4th and 1 against Western Michigan. Rolls out, set his feet off play action, fired to a tight end crosser who was wide open, and he had scored on that play. Nothing really to get you hype about compared to what he played last year with only a couple of snaps. Showed some solid running ability as well. So not much really to judge off of that. Nick was billed at 6'1", 203 last year. Still developing his frame, of course. You wonder how much taller he will actually get. I'd say that's really the only red flag at this moment, is being undersized. And, of course, our young quarterbacks, how they play or how will they handle with adversity, because that's something you're going to battle here at Ohio State. This is a very, unforgiving fan base. And, again, you saw what happened with McCord. He got blamed for a lot of things that were not exactly his fault 2 years ago. And it's going to be a bumpy sledding early on. You've seen it with C.J. Stroud. This guy had 400-plus yards against Oregon, but he had a bad interception, and his defense got cooked on the ground, and it was all his fault. So this is not a very forgiving fan base, Nick. I know the staff and his teammates will be patient with him. He's got to handle that adversity, though, because these Buckeye fans, they're going to come after him if he makes one mistake.
These Buckeye fans will come after him. I think Julian Sayin is a quarterback that is, perfectly capable of being a starter for this team. You question what they could do. I don't know if I love this sort of revolving door of quarterbacks. I didn't think they should have run Kyle McCord out of town, and I thought he had a phenomenal season at Syracuse. Will Howard was a really good, player to plug in. Obviously, they won a national title, and now the defending national champions got to figure something out, and I think they're going to take a step back at quarterbacks. I just don't know if I trust these two. Sayin only lasted 11 days at Alabama. He showed up on campus. Nick Saban retired the next day, and then he entered the portal 9 days later and then was out 2 days after that, committing to Ohio State, hoping to find something more stable, I guess, and was questioning maybe potentially the direction that Alabama was going in hiring a head coach. This kid's confident, right? This kid was a high-level recruit out of high school for a reason, a 5-star, number 20 in the nation, number 3 quarterback in his class, was the number 1 quarterback in his transfer class, although, it's kind of a bit wonky in my opinion. 6'1", 203, I think, this guy's got a lot. Great arm, the timing's phenomenal, A-plus football IQ from what we've seen. Not a lot of reps at the college level. Obviously, you rattled off what happened there. But the high school film is really good. This is a kid that's coming over from California that was really productive playing high-level high school football in California. I think the frame, it's a little undersized, a little worried about that, and certainly a tough environment to get thrust into as a guy who is, doesn't have really a whole lot of experience starting at this moment in time. I figured Ohio State might go out and try and get a quarterback out of the portal. They did not end up doing so. It looks like they're going to rock with what they have in their room, and it's certainly a gamble for Ryan Day and company, right? This is a team that has high expectations of going back to winning another national title. They return a great wide receiver room and a good running back room, which will certainly help out a young quarterback. But it's very tough playing on the road in the Big Ten, some of these tougher environments, and can certainly get to Sayin early on. This is a big gamble, in my opinion. It's sort of a boomer bust thing. It could work out very well, but it could also backfire quickly, and they could find themselves in a big hole without having a deep quarterback room.
Yeah, I think you're being a little too high critical here, because this is a highly talented quarterback. You spoke about some of the positive traits. Great timing, the anticipation really stood out. Underrated athletic ability. If you want to play in this offense, you have to have a great arm. That's something he has. A nice base as well. This is an offense that has a lot of spacing when it comes to their routes, a lot of downfield stuff, a lot of depth as well. So you have to have a nice big arm. Of course, the weapons you have are certainly going to help you at all times in this offense. But I think C.J. Stroud's a good example. I picked him to win the Heisman in 2021. First 3 weeks are a bit of a struggle. Didn't play against Akron, and then after that he came back healthy, put on an absolute clinic, had 4 passing touchdowns in 3 straight games. And he was great the rest of the year. He had 6 passing touchdowns in 2 games the remainder of the season. So he quickly was able to get in sync with this offense and started putting on a show. Of course, that's a guy who's was a high-end draft pick in the NFL. It's going to be high expectations for Sayin, who was billed as a higher recruit than Stroud, though. And this guy seems to be probably more advanced than CJ was at that moment in time. Of course, the weapons are great, but they're not as good as what Stroud had, where he had like 3 or 4 first-rounders running out there with him. So I think Julian's saying this is going to be a guy that's going to be very good for Ohio State. I don't think they should have went to the portal at all. You criticize them for, having a revolving door, but at the same time, you said they should get someone in the portal, Nick. So is there anything you want to clarify in that end? Because it seems like you're kind of working both sides.
No, I do think it is the wrong decision, but I think it's also sort of the right decision, right? I'm playing on both sides, and you're right. But when you look at it, this is a team that I just don't think Sayin or the other quarterbacks in this roster are ready to start right now. I don't like going to the portal, and yes, that creates an unhealthy cycle. So I guess at some point you have to bite the bullet and start a kid who's probably not ready to go. I don't love going to the portal every single year, but I think it's an exception for a high-level program like Ohio State. I think a program like Colorado, I think it's wrong to go to the portal every single year. But Ohio State is such a high-level program that I think you can get away with that. I think they get a mulligan, and they could be the one to do it. We've seen them have success with Will Howard, and this is an offense that Ryan Day runs. I like having experience in the Ohio State offense. I like having experience at the college football level and, playing good reps. I know McCord didn't have a whole lot of experience either. I just get a little bit uneasy plugging in a guy who doesn't have a whole lot of success. This is a very complicated offense, a very high-flying offense that has a lot of moving parts here. Playing at a high-level school like that, it might be tough for a guy like Sayin, who does not have a whole lot of experience playing high-level football in college right now.
Especially your first game coming against Texas. The only way to get experience is go out there and do it, especially if you have high upside guys. That's how these guys end up becoming good players. Everyone comes in as a freshman and has to build up that experience. And he has, a year in the system after, last year in terms of practicing at least, and a couple of game reps as well. Only guy on roster of experience, more so would be Lincoln Kindholz, a guy who ended up being forced into action in that bowl game, the Cotton Bowl in 23 against Missouri. Looked bad. Very tough spot to be pushed into against a great defense. Didn't have a full group of weapons to throw to either. So that was a tough thing for them. They talked about how they think he's a good developmental player as well, though, so maybe he could sneak his way into this quarterback battle. But I think Sayin, he's going to be the guy here. I think he's going to do very well early on. There will certainly be bumpy, but as the year goes on, Ohio State, the guys at quarterback, they just don't struggle. It's not really something that's a problem for them. It never has been, especially under Ryan Day. So even if there is an inexperience factor, there's a learning curve of everybody at every sport, and I think he'll do just fine, especially since he has more advanced football IQ than most of the QBs coming out, out of high school. So I think he'll be great. Aaron Owen's another guy who transferred out. He was another high-end recruit. He's going to South Carolina, and that's why there could be potentially, maybe a quarterback brewing battle for QB1, more so QB2, Tavian St. Clair. He's likely going to be that toughest competition over Kindholz. He was a 5-star quarterback in his own right, 4th-ranked recruit in this incoming class from Bellefontaine, Ohio, about an hour from Columbus. Was committed for over a year, never a doubt here. Committed about a month after the offer in 2023 hit his desk from the Buckeyes. So I think he has no problem waiting potentially 2 years, but could he start sooner? Nick, I know you're kind of ragging on, the inexperience from the guy that has been in college for a year, so I definitely don't think you're going to expect this guy to get on the field a whole lot.
No, I don't think St. Clair should play this year, but I think he's a guy you can certainly develop, and I do have a lot of positive things to say. I will say that. I just don't think it's the right time. I think I got to clarify. I do think that you should not run a quarterback out of town to go grab a quarterback out of the portal. I think that's the point I was trying to say, is how they ran McCord out of town to get Will Howard. I don't think that's what they should do, but if you have a glaring need at quarterback, there's no issue plugging in quarterbacks over and over again. I think that's more what I was trying to say. I just didn't like how they ran McCord out of town. I still have some sour feelings about that, even though it did work out pretty well for Ohio State and McCord in the end. I just think it's a gamble that, yes, you nailed it there, but I don't think you're going to get that 10 out of 10 times if you do it over again. I do think this St. Clair kid is a very talented quarterback coming in. Obviously a high-level 5-star recruit that's plugging in. I love the frame, right? 6'4", 225 is phenomenal. This kid's very physical, very strong, accurate on the move. The strength and agility is incredible. He can really run as well. Very accurate, makes a lot of throws in tight windows. I like the ball placement early on. This is a kid that I think you could really develop here. This is a guy that I think, if you start him in 2 years, a year or two, but most likely 2 years, I think you can get a lot out of him in the future. This is a kid that has a lot of high upside, in my opinion. I just love the frame, love the arm strength potentially. The guy towers over the offensive line, looks really good while doing it. 4th-ranked player in the nation, number 3 quarterback, number 1 player in Ohio, stays home. Ohio State gets a guy close by really was easy for them to land this commitment. Like you said, he was committed for a very long time. This guy, I think, is a very strong player to have in the future after you're done, starting potentially Julian Sayin or anyone else. I think Sayin obviously is the guy you want to go with right now. This is a kid that I think has all the upside in the world, learn the playbook, develop a lot here, and he could be an incredible star for this team in the future.
The thing about St. Clair is his size is phenomenal. You alluded to that frame, 6'4", 225 coming out of high school. That's phenomenal. That's a lot better than what Sayin's going to probably ever end up with, especially in terms of height, because this kid's probably not done growing either, so that's phenomenal size, a great building block moving forward. Of course, that concerns. He played in a small town, Ohio football, so the adjustment period could be a tad longer compared to Sayin, who did play in Southern California, and of course does have a year of experience practicing with all these guys. Practice against that first team defense, I'm sure, on occasion throughout the year last fall. Love what Ohio State has at quarterback. I don't think again's ever going to be a problem for him. I definitely think that QB2 will be something to monitor because of Sayin, potentially struggles or gets a little banged up. Who would they have to go to in that area, especially with an offensive line that's still a work in progress? The run game wasn't always as effective the last couple of seasons for the Buckeyes. The quarterbacks have a lot of heavy lifting here to do for the Buckeyes, of course. Surrounded by a wealth of talent, though, so the job's certainly going to be much easier for them. I think of Julian Sayin kind of comparable to Bryce Young, right? Because you talk about first-year guys getting thrown to the wolves. With Bryce Young, he sat for his first year, but he was considered a Heisman favorite in his first year starting, and he ended up winning the Heisman. So it's not always bad, Nick. Guys can get out there and certainly exceed expectations times 10, because even Young played better than we thought he would, even as a Heisman favorite. So sometimes getting these guys out there and letting them play in high-end competition can certainly lead to a lot greater than bad. What are your final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think St. Clair, you do make a great point there, right? Played low-level football in terms of, high school football in Ohio. Played, tier 3 football. There's 7 tiers, 7 classes, class 3 football. So definitely on the lower spectrum, certainly towards the bottom there. And that is slightly concerning because there's a big jump up. Had a 9-3 record, so, picked up some losses there. Was solid, for his team, right? 29 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, while also having 9 rushing touchdowns. But, the team struggled a little bit. Maybe he was playing on a bad team. Playing low-level football, you'd probably prefer a guy to play, Class 6, Class 7 football, those higher tier up there. But I do agree with you. This kid is still growing. I think I love the frame, right? As soon as I saw the numbers and watched him on film, I was like, wow, this kid's just phenomenal frame. This is something you can really work with and develop, sort of building towards that pro-style quarterback, pro-style frame. I love it a lot. I think it's a lot. I think Sayin doesn't have a terrible one per se, but still 3 inches shorter and about 20 pounds lighter. I don't necessarily love that long term. I think this St. Clair kid has a lot to develop and grow in terms of football IQ, but I think his frame and arm strength are just absolutely phenomenal. I think the Buckeyes are loaded for the future. Sayin's going to get to go early on. Will it work out? I'm certainly cautiously optimistic. Like you said, they got to play Texas early on, so that will certainly be a tough matchup against a team that was really competitive in the SEC last year, played in the college football playoffs. So it's going to be trial by fire for Julian Sayin. This is a kid that's got all the talent in the world, so I certainly think he can do it. I feel a little cautiously optimistic, but I do think in the future Ohio State has a nice clear path. No need to go after a portal quarterback in the future. I think Tivian St. Clair will be phenomenal for this team going forward. This offense still has a lot of talented pieces that will certainly help Sayin out. It's not like he's playing on a bad offense at all, and they really do know how to run a really good offense at Ohio State. They'll be able to run the ball effectively as well. With C.J. Donaldson, they added another portal plus some other players on the roster, so I think Ohio State's offense will be just fine, but you have to wonder, can Sayin win those big games, make the key throw, avoid making a mistake in in those big matchups with Michigan, with Oregon, some of those other bigger teams in the Big Ten, and then ultimately in the college football playoff against SEC teams that are very strong as well. Only time will tell.
Yeah, again, they host Texas week 1, so we're going to find out very fast. It's a great way to get introduced to the sport, is go out there and ball against Texas. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And those numbers 6-1, 2-3, those will be much improved whenever we get the numbers throughout the summer. So those are not final by any means. Still young guys, still filling that out. That's gonna be it for today's episode. As always, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.